The siren hit first, sharp and sudden, slicing through the gray afternoon like a warning shot. I looked up just as the ambulance sped past the hospital gates, red lights flashing across the dull sky. I was standing outside Riverside General, waiting to pick up Lily from her Tuesday art therapy. Same bench, same time. I'd usually scroll my phone, sip bad coffee. That day I was just watching. Then I saw her, a little girl, no more than 8 years old, standing alone near the curb, hugging a worn stuffed rabbit. Her pajamas were too thin for the chill in the air. She looked pale, frighteningly pale. Her lips moved, but no sound came. She took one shaky step forward and collapsed. No cry, no warning, just dropped like a rag doll. I ran. I don't remember deciding to move. My legs just did. I reached her in seconds, knelt down. Her skin was cold. Her pulse? Barely there. I cradled her, whispered, "You're okay, sweetheart, I've got you." Even though I had no idea what I was doing, I burst through the ER doors, shouting help. Nurses turned. A gurney appeared. Hands reached for her. I laid her down gently, her fingers still clutching that rabbit like it held her together. I stepped back, breathless. The world narrowed to a point. I didn't know who she was, but I knew she was someone's child, and at that moment, she was mine to protect. The chaos in the ER was immediate. Voices rising, heels squeaking against tile, the steady beeping of monitors as the little girl was wheeled into a treatment room. I stood frozen, my hands still tingling from the weight of her. Nurses rushed past me, one of them asking for my name, but I couldn't answer. My eyes stayed locked on the swinging double doors she'd just disappeared behind. Then she appeared, the woman. She came running down the hallway, hair damp from the drizzle outside, a phone still clutched in one hand. Her coat hung open, her blouse half tucked, like she'd dressed in a hurry. But what stopped me wasn't the way she looked, it was her eyes, sharp, piercing. A kind of exhausted pride burned behind them, like someone who'd fought too many battles and refused to lose the next one. There was fear in her face, yes, but something else too. A strength that felt familiar. She pushed past the staff, barely speaking, and disappeared behind those same doors. But for a split second, just before she vanished, our eyes met, and something passed between us. Recognition? No, not exactly. It was more like a memory I hadn't made yet. Something just out of reach, tugging at the edge of my mind. I didn't know her. And yet, somehow I did. I stood there a while longer, surrounded by strangers, but feeling like I just stepped into the middle of a story I wasn't supposed to be part of. I didn't know that moment, her eyes, that girl, that hospital, would become the thread that unraveled everything I thought I knew about my life. I didn't know that this was the beginning of the end of my solitude, of my silence, of my old, broken life. My name is Ethan. I'm a single dad. Before I go any further, if this story is already making you feel something, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel Daily Stories of Grace. I promise you, the things you're about to hear, they're going to stay with you for a long time. This isn't just a story about a little girl who collapsed outside a hospital. It's about what happened after and how it changed everything. Now, let me start again. That title, Single Dad, used to feel small, heavy, too, like a badge I didn't ask for but wore anyway day after day. It meant working double shifts, missing sleep, saying no when I wanted to say yes, and showing up even when I was breaking inside. But being a dad to Lily, it saved me. Still, nothing could have prepared me for what happened that Tuesday afternoon. The girl on the pavement, the woman whose eyes stopped me cold, the way my whole world tilted without warning. You know those moments when life splits into before and after? Yeah, that was mine. And yet I had no idea just how deep this story would go. That the woman I'd locked in memory 8 years ago was about to walk back into my life, and that the child I carried into that hospital was mine. But we're not there yet. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the version of me who had no clue what was coming, who only knew how to survive, not how to love again. Before that day at the hospital, life had settled into something like survival. Not peace, not joy, just survival with quiet edges. I used to work at a small auto shop off Route 6, Murphy's Garage. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. Oil under your fingernails, the hum of tools in your ears, the satisfaction of fixing something broken. I liked that. It gave me structure, a rhythm, something dependable in a world that hadn't been kind to me in a long time. But when the layoffs came, I was one of the first to go. Murphy patted my shoulder and said it wasn't personal, just numbers. He gave me a box with my name on it and a check that barely covered 2 months' rent. And just like that, I was unemployed. Another man in line at the unemployment office. Another father trying to make sure the lights stayed on. Since then, I've been picking up odd jobs. Small engine repairs, fixing broken fences, rewiring old lamps people couldn't part with. Whatever I could do with the tools I still had and the hands that knew how to build. Most days, it wasn't enough, but it got us by. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with peeling paint on the walls and a heater that rattled when it kicked in. But it was ours, and more importantly, it was Lily's. My daughter. She was 7, bright, quiet, thoughtful in ways that made her seem older than she was, the kind of kid who didn't ask for much, but always noticed everything. She had these big, searching eyes that carried too much sadness for someone her age. I guess that's what happens when your mom walks out on you in the middle of a Tuesday. She doesn't talk about her mom much anymore. Neither do I. But the silence says enough. Every Tuesday, I take her to art therapy at Riverside General. She loved it. Said painting helped her breathe better on the inside. I didn't fully understand what that meant, but it felt important, so I never missed a session. Even when I didn't have gas in the truck, we walked. Truth is, I wasn't just taking her there for her. I needed those Tuesdays too. They were the only hour of the week I could sit still and just exhale. No phone calls, no bills, just quiet. Just Lily in that bright little room with paint on her fingers, and me waiting in the hallway with a styrofoam cup of bad coffee and too many thoughts. Being a single dad wasn't something I planned. It was something I became. One scraped knee, one bedtime story, one load of laundry at a time. And if you'd asked me then, I would have told you I didn't need anyone else. I had Lily, and that was enough. At least, that's what I told myself. But the truth? I was tired. Tired of surviving. Tired of pretending I didn't want more. I just didn't think life had more to offer me. Not anymore. Our apartment wasn't much. The kitchen light flickered if you turned the microwave on too fast. The fridge hummed like it was singing off key. And the floor tiles near the sink had a crack that curved like a lightning bolt. But Lily never complained. Not once. Most nights, it was just the two of us at the little wooden table by the window. She sat cross-legged on the chair, hair always in some kind of messy braid, digging into whatever I managed to scrape together. Mac and cheese, canned soup, tuna on toast. We didn't call it dinner. We called it together time. Sometimes she'd bring her drawings to the table. Crayon skies, paper cats, stick figures holding hands under rain clouds. Once, she drew me with a cape and a wrench, smiling under a son that had a mustache. "Super Dad," she said. I taped it to the fridge. Still haven't taken it down. I tried to make things feel normal for her, not like something was missing, even though we both knew something was. On weekends, we'd take long walks down to the river. She'd skip stones or chase dragonflies or sit on the dock with her feet dangling just above the water. "I think the river has secrets," she once whispered. "What kind of secrets?" he asked. "The kind you only hear if you're quiet long enough." She had a way of saying things that stopped me cold, like her heart knew things her mouth didn't yet know how to explain. We didn't have vacations, no amusement parks, no fancy birthday parties. But we had cardboard forts built from leftover appliance boxes, hot cocoa with too many marshmallows, and Sunday mornings where we stayed in pajamas until lunch. I wasn't the perfect dad, not by a long shot, but I was present. And in a world that had already taken too much from her, I swore I wouldn't be another thing that left. It was just us, me and Lily, the smallest team in the world, but strong in ways you couldn't measure with money or square footage. Most nights, after Lily had fallen asleep, usually with her arm flopped across a sketchbook and marker smudges on her cheek, I'd slip out to the small porch behind our building. It wasn't much, just a rusted lawn chair, a chipped railing, and a view of a tired alleyway with one flickering street lamp. But up above, if the clouds weren't too heavy, I could see the stars. That's where I did my thinking, my doubting. I'd sit there in the stillness, hands wrapped around a mug gone cold, and ask myself the same question over and over again. Am I enough for her? Not in a dramatic, self-pitying kind of way, more like a quiet ache that never fully went away. Because some nights, I'd see her staring out the window longer than a child should. I'd hear her whisper to her stuffed animals when she thought I wasn't listening. I'd find drawings tucked under her bed, pictures of moms and daughters, or families with more than just two people at the table. And I'd wonder if love was really enough. If presents made up for the things I couldn't give her. If showing up day after day, dollar after dollar, could patch the holes someone else had left behind. The thing is, I thought I was the one holding everything together. I thought I was the anchor. But over time, I realized something that stopped me cold. It wasn't me keeping Lily steady. It was Lily keeping me from falling apart. Her laughter, even when the fridge was empty. Her hugs, even when I was too tired to smile. The way she'd slip her hand into mine at the crosswalk without a word. She didn't need perfect. She just needed me to stay, and I did. Because when you've been broken by life and someone still looks at you like you're home, you hold on, and you don't let go. Let me take you back to that moment at the hospital I told you about earlier. The sirens, the little girl collapsing on the pavement, me running through the sliding ER doors with her in my arms like the world was on fire. That wasn't the end of it, not even close. Because what happened next, that was the moment everything truly began. I remember standing there, just inside the hospital entrance, heart pounding like I'd run a mile. The girl, still unnamed then, had been rushed through the double doors, a team of nurses swarming around her, shouting terms I couldn't process. I just stood there, catching my breath, trying to convince myself she was going to be okay. And that's when I heard it. Where is she? Has anyone seen a little girl? Dark hair, pajamas. Clara? The voice came fast, loud, and sharp enough to split glass. I turned, and there she was. A woman cutting through the chaos with precision, like she belonged in the middle of an emergency. Tall, elegant, purposeful. A long coat half-buttoned over a sleek blouse and tailored pants. She looked like she'd stepped out of a boardroom into a hurricane. And she wasn't asking. She was commanding. She marched straight past the front desk, barely slowing down, eyes scanning every face, until they landed on mine. That's when the world slowed. Her gaze locked on me like she'd walked into a room expecting confusion and instead found a ghost. There was something in her eyes. Yes, panic, but also pride, exhaustion, strength, and something else I couldn't name, something that felt familiar. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she looked away, turned toward the nurses, and demanded to be taken to her daughter. They obeyed like they knew better than to question her. Before disappearing behind the ER doors, she glanced back, just for a breath, but the weight of that look lingered long after she was gone. That was the first time I saw her. Vivian Hale. I didn't know her name yet, or why her eyes made something in my chest twist. But deep down, a voice I hadn't heard in years whispered, "You know this isn't over." And it was right. I didn't expect to see her again. Not the girl, not the woman. After that night at the hospital, I figured our lives had brushed for a brief, strange moment, like train tracks, crossing in the dark, then veered back onto separate paths. But 2 days later, as I was fixing the brake light on a neighbor's truck out in the lot behind our building, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Almost ignored it. Something told me to pick up. "Mr. Ethan Cole?" The voice was clipped, professional. "Yes?" "This is from Riverside General. Ms. Vivian Hale asked if we could pass along her thanks. She'd like to drop something off for you and your daughter, if that's okay." I hesitated. I guess that's fine. An hour later, she was at my door. Dressed down this time. Still polished, expensive watch, quiet elegance, but no heels, no storm. She handed me a small paper bag, cookies from some fancy bakery downtown, and 2 handwritten notes. One from her, and one in messy purple crayon that just said, "Thank you for saving me," from Clara. I don't know why I invited her in. Maybe it was politeness, maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was something else entirely. She didn't stay long. just stood near the door while Lily offered Clara one of her drawings. Vivian looked at my daughter with a softness I didn't expect. There was a flicker of emotion there, like something catching in her throat. "I don't usually let Clara have sweets," she said suddenly. "But today's an exception." Clara looked up at her. "But Mommy," she said, quiet but clear, "you said no candy at all. You said it could make my heart sick again." Vivian stiffened. It was so subtle, most people wouldn't have caught it. But I did. A slight pull in her jaw, the way she blinked, once, slowly, as if buying time. Then she smiled, kneeling beside her daughter. "I did say that, honey," she said gently. "But this is just a little bite. And Mommy talked to the doctor. It's okay this one time." Clara nodded, not fully convinced. I stood silently, something beginning to stir in the back of my mind. Heartsick again? Was Clara recovering from something serious? Something congenital? Something genetic? Vivian stood up and looked at me. For a moment, her mask slipped, and in that split second, I saw it. Not fear, not panic, but recognition. The way her eyes searched mine, as if trying to confirm a suspicion she hadn't dared speak aloud. But she said nothing, just offered a faint smile, thanked me again, and led Clara back to the waiting car with tinted windows and a driver in a press shirt. I stood at the doorway long after they'd left. The drawing Lily had given Clara still sat on the table, and the words Clara had said kept echoing in my head. "You said it could make my heart sick again." It should have been nothing, but it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like a breadcrumb, and something inside me was already following the trail. 3 days passed. I tried to convince myself that nothing about that night at the hospital meant anything, that Vivian Hale was just another parent, grateful, kind, momentarily shaken. I'd saved her daughter. She said thank you, that was it. Except it wasn't. On Friday morning, I opened my mailbox and found a neatly wrapped package. No return address. Inside, a navy blue dress for Lily, a soft cashmere scarf, and a small envelope with my name and handwriting too graceful to be anyone else's. "Thank you again for your kindness. I owe you more than a few cookies. If you and Lily are free this Sunday, we'd love to treat you to brunch, just as a small way to say thank you properly. Vivian." But it wasn't signed with her last name. But I knew. I stood there with the note in my hand, heart thudding in a way I didn't understand. Lily, of course, was thrilled. "Daddy, can I wear the new dress?" How could I say no? Sunday came. The car that picked us up wasn't just a car. It was a statement. Black, sleek, with a driver in a suit who opened the door like we were VIPs. Lily giggled the whole ride. Me? I sat stiffly, clutching my worn flannel shirt, feeling like a cardboard cutout version of myself. The restaurant wasn't a restaurant. It was some rooftop private dining club with glass walls and a view of the city that made you forget the ground existed. There were no prices on the menu, only chef selections. Vivian was already there, in a cream blouse and pearl earrings, greeting us like we were family. "Hi, Lily," she smiled warmly. "You look beautiful." Then she turned to me. "Ethan." It wasn't just a hello. It was a pause, a memory, a whisper between the lines. I nodded politely. The food came, delicate plates I couldn't pronounce. Vivian talked easily with Lily, asking about school, favorite colors, even the book she liked. She was good, too good. It was like watching someone who had studied how to care and perfected it. But when she looked at me, I caught something different. Regret? Nostalgia? Or maybe guilt? I barely spoke, just kept my eyes on Lily, making sure she wasn't overwhelmed. When the check never came and we were ushered out with thank yous and warm smiles, I felt a strange hollowness settle in my chest. The ride back was quiet. Lily held the small leather bracelet Vivian had given her, tracing its pattern with her fingers. "Do you like her?" she asked suddenly. I looked at my daughter. "I think she's kind." Lily nodded. "She reminds me of someone." "I don't know who." I didn't answer. Because I did know, and as I tucked Lily in that night, I found myself staring at the box on our kitchen shelf, the one filled with old letters, faded photos, and one memory I'd tried hard to forget. Vivian Hale, 8 years ago, Israel, a youth mission, a week that changed everything. I hadn't thought of her in years, but now she was everywhere, and I couldn't tell if she was just saying thank you or reaching for something long buried. I didn't belong in her world, but somehow she kept stepping into mine. The wind came in around 9 p.m., sharp, cold, and almost theatrical, like the sky had a secret it was desperate to spill. Vivian had invited us over again. Just a simple dinner, she said, at her place this time. Lily had been begging to see Clara again, and I was curious. Cautious, but curious. Her house, or should I say mansion, sat on the hillside like it had been poured out of a dream. Floor-to-ceiling windows, soft lighting, a fireplace already flickering by the time we arrived. It was supposed to be just a few hours. But the sky had other plans. The storm rolled in faster than anyone expected. Roads flooded, trees bent like dancers in pain, and by 10:30 the roads were closed. "You two should stay the night," Vivian said, calm as ever, holding a glass of wine and watching the weather with practiced elegance. "It's not safe to drive back." I hesitated. Every part of me screamed this was too much, too fast. But Lily had already changed into Clara's extra pajamas and was curled up with her watching cartoons in the guest room. "I can take the couch," I muttered. Vivian smiled. "I figured you would." It was some time past midnight. The rain hadn't stopped. The wind howled against the windows like a warning no one was listening to. I sat in the living room, staring at the fire, a blanket around my shoulders. I heard her footsteps before I saw her, barefoot, wrapped in a cream-colored robe, hair damp from the shower. She sat across from me without a word for a long time. Just the fire between us. And something else. Older, heavier. "You're quiet tonight," she said softly. "Storm makes it hard to think straight." She nodded, then glanced at the fire. "Do you remember the Negev desert?" The words hit like a heartbeat skipped. I turned slowly. "Yes," I said. "Israel, the mission trip, summer of, 2017? She smiled faintly. "I didn't think you'd remember." "I do." I remembered the desert heat, the orphanage on the outskirts of Beersheba, the long days carrying crates of food and medical supplies, the nights on the roof looking up at stars that felt too big for our lives and her. Vivian wasn't Vivian Hale back then, just Vi, the political science major who always carried a worn-out notebook and made everyone around her feel like they were standing in the presence of something just beginning. "I remember you wore this ridiculous straw hat," I said, almost laughing. She rolled her eyes. "It kept the sun off. And you used to quote Rumi out loud like it was scripture." "Well," she shrugged, "I was 20. It was either poetry or panic." We both laughed then, and it felt real, like 8 years hadn't passed, like we were still those sunburned kids pretending we were saving the world, one sack of rice at a time. "Why didn't we stay in touch?" I asked before I could stop myself. Vivian looked into the fire. Her voice, when it came, was quieter than before. "Because sometimes you meet someone at the wrong time, and if you're lucky, life finds a way to bring them back when it matters most." I didn't know how to respond, so I just sat there, listening to the storm, feeling the past stirring like ashes in a hearth that never truly went out. And somewhere upstairs, Lily and Clara slept, unaware that the truth had just begun to rise like thunder on the edge of night. We were still sitting in front of the fire, the storm outside now just a hush of wind and rain tapping gently against the tall windows. Vivian hadn't said much after her last words. The air between us had grown heavier, more intimate, and yet strangely distant. She took a slow sip from the tea she'd made for both of us and stared at the flames like they could give her courage. "I have something to tell you, Ethan," she said finally. Her tone shifted. It wasn't light anymore, it was careful, like she was stepping barefoot across broken glass. I turned to face her. "Okay." She didn't look at me, not right away. "Do you remember our last night in Israel?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "Yeah." "You disappeared before breakfast. I figured you just moved on." "I did," she whispered, "but not in the way you think." I didn't say anything. I could feel something swelling beneath the surface, but I didn't know what it was yet. She turned to me then, and her eyes, they weren't the eyes of the confident CEO anymore. They were raw, human, frightened even. I didn't plan it, and I didn't know until I got back to the States. I tried to find you, Ethan, I really did, but all I had was your first name, no phone number, no social media. You didn't even give me your last name. I blinked. I didn't think it mattered back then. We were just kids. I thought it was just a moment. It wasn't just a moment, she said, almost trembling. It gave me Clara. My heart stopped. What? I asked, barely breathing. Clara, she said again, slower this time. She's your daughter. It felt like the room spun sideways, like gravity gave out. I sat there frozen. My mind tried to find an anchor, a reason, a mistake in what I'd just heard, but her eyes told me it was real. She's mine? I whispered. Vivian nodded, her voice breaking. I raised her alone. I built my company while pregnant, while nursing her, while trying to figure out how to be a mother when the man who gave her life was just gone. But you weren't gone by choice. I know that now. I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. I stared into the fire, but all I could see was Clara's face, her laugh, her tiny hands when she reached for my wrench the other day, the way she called me Uncle Ethan, as if fate had been playing a cruel joke. I tried to breathe. I have a daughter, I said aloud, as if saying it might make it feel less impossible. I didn't know how to tell you, Vivian said gently, but after seeing you with her, after watching you save her life, I couldn't hide it anymore. I didn't know whether to cry, to shout, or to fall to my knees. Everything in my life had been about Lily. She was my world, my purpose. And now, suddenly, there was another piece of me, another child, another life I had helped create without knowing. I swallowed the storm inside me. I don't know how to feel, I admitted, voice shaking, but thank you for raising her, for protecting her, for not giving up on her. Vivian's hand reached across the space between us, and for the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar bloom quietly in my chest. Hope. At that moment, when Vivian's words finally sank in, when the firelight flickered against her tear-grilled eyes and Clara's face floated in my mind like a dream I'd forgotten, I truly thought I'd lost everything. Not in the way you lose a job or a home or even someone you love. No, this felt deeper. I had lost a piece of myself, one I had never even known was missing. A daughter. My daughter. It was too much for one night, too much for one heart to carry all at once. So we sat in silence, Vivian and I, until the fire burned low and the storm outside faded into a light drizzle. Words failed us after that. Only glances passed between us, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. But I can't take you further into that yet. Not before we rewind to the morning after, because what happened next didn't just change me, it changed Lily. And if I'm being honest, that was the part I wasn't ready for. We woke up early. The house was quiet. Vivian had left breakfast warming in the oven. Croissants, fresh fruit, even cocoa for the kids. Clara ran to the kitchen like nothing had changed. But Lily, she stood by the window, arms folded, eyes narrowed at me. She wasn't angry. Not exactly. It was worse than that. She was confused. Scared, maybe. I knelt beside her, brushing a hand over her tangled hair. "Hey, sleepyhead, you okay?" She didn't answer at first, just stared out at the garden, at Clara laughing as she chased butterflies under the pale morning sun. Then her voice came quiet, but sharp. "Are we staying here now? With her?" "With who? With Clara's mom," she said, finally turning to face me. "She looks at you like you're not just my dad." And there it was, that innocent truth kids seem to pick up before adults even realize what's happening. I smiled, or tried to, but inside, I felt the tremble return, because I hadn't told Lily anything yet. Not about Israel, not about Clara, and certainly not about the fact that she might not be my only child anymore. But that's where the next part begins, with the weight of one truth pressing against the love I held for another. Let's go back to that kitchen, shall we? Where the table was too elegant, the silence too loud, and a girl named Lily was about to teach me what real loyalty looks like. I didn't notice it at first, maybe because I was too caught up in Clara's eyes, so much of mine in them, or maybe because I was still stumbling through the shock, the guilt, and the wonder of suddenly being a father again. But Lily noticed, and that was what broke me. It started with little things. She got quieter at dinner. She stopped laughing when Clara made silly faces. And when I reached for her hand that evening on the walk home, She let it slide out of mine without a word. I tried to pretend it was nothing, that she was just tired. But that night, long after we got home, I found her curled up on the worn couch in the living room, her blanket pulled over her head like she was trying to disappear. "Sweetheart," I whispered, kneeling beside her, "why aren't you in bed?" She didn't move, didn't speak, but I heard it, the soft, stifled sound of a sob. I sat down beside her, pulled her into my arms. She didn't fight me, but she didn't cling either. "I saw how you looked at her," she whispered, barely audible, "like you used to look at me when it was just us." My heart cracked clean in two. "Oh, Lily." "I know I'm not really special," she went on, her voice trembling. "She's your real daughter, right? Maybe now you won't need me anymore." I held her tighter than I ever had. "Lily, listen to me," I said, my voice thick with tears I wasn't strong enough to hide. "You are not just a part of my life. You are my whole life. Before any of this, there was you, and there will always be you." She looked up at me, eyes wide, wet with hurt. "But she's your blood." I cupped her face gently. "And you're my heart." That night, I didn't sleep. I just held her. Her small breaths pressed against my chest, and I realized love doesn't divide when it's real. It multiplies. But it's up to us to make sure every child knows they still belong. And Lily, my brave, beautiful Lily, had always belonged. The next morning, I found her in the garden. Vivian. She wasn't dressed like a CEO that day. No tailored blazer, no commanding heels, just a soft sweater, her hair pulled back, her eyes fixed on something far away. Maybe the past. Maybe me. "I thought I'd find you here," I said quietly. She didn't turn, just nodded. Clara's still sleeping. The storm kept her up. I stood beside her for a moment, unsure of what came next, but she didn't let the silence linger. "I'm not going to run from this," she said. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the storm still echoing in it. "I won't lie to Clara, and I won't pretend you don't exist." Those words hit deeper than I expected. Not because they hurt, because they didn't. They healed. "I want her to know you," Vivian continued, finally turning toward me. "You have a right to that. And she deserves it." I looked into her eyes, the same ones that had once met mine under a desert sun in Israel, when we were just two reckless young people trying to make a difference in a broken world. Now, we were standing in the middle of a different kind of brokenness. "I won't fail her," I said, and I meant every word. But Vivian's gaze didn't soften. In fact, it grew sharper, like a mother's, not a lover's. "That's not good enough," she said quietly. "I need more than promises, Ethan. I need certainty." She cut me off gently. "I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because Clara is everything to me, and I've built her world carefully to protect her. I won't let that world fall apart." I understood. God, I understood. "She doesn't know yet," Vivian added, voice tight. "I want to be the one to tell her. But I need to know, if I do, if I tell her who you really are, will you be there? Will you stay?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I doubted my heart, but because I knew what she was really asking. Are you ready to be her father forever? And the weight of that truth, it was the heaviest and most sacred thing I'd ever been offered. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window in the guest room of Vivian's estate, watching the slow, quiet breathing of Lily on the small sofa bed beside me. Outside, the rain had stopped, but inside me, it was still pouring. Vivian's words echoed in my mind. "Will you stay?" It wasn't just a question. It was a crossroad, a mirror, a door I couldn't close once opened. And I knew, deep down, that I didn't want to. I had run long enough. That morning, I asked Vivian if I could speak to Clara, alone. She hesitated, but only for a moment, then nodded. I found Clara sitting in the sunroom, coloring something with bright markers. A crooked rainbow, a house with flowers, a girl holding hands with someone. No face yet. She looked up at me and smiled. "Hi, Ethan." "Hey, kiddo," I said, my voice softer than usual. "Mind if I sit?" She nodded. There was a long silence between us, but it didn't feel heavy, just careful, like two hearts stepping slowly toward a bridge. "Clara," I began, "there's something your mom and I talked about." something important. Her hand paused over the drawing. I took a breath. I knew your mom a long time ago, before you were born, and I think I might be your biological father. She blinked. Once, twice. But she didn't cry. She didn't run. She just looked at me, quiet and thoughtful, like a child wise beyond her years. "Does that mean I have to call you Dad now?" she asked. I smiled, shaking my head gently. "No, not unless you want to. I'm not here to take over or change things. I just want to be in your life, however you're comfortable." She considered that, then went back to her drawing and added a second face to the figure holding her hand. No label, no name, just a man with a soft smile, standing beside her. That night, I spoke with Vivian, told her my choice. "I'm not here to fight or claim," I said. "I'm here to show up, to be whatever Clara needs me to be, and maybe we can figure the rest out together." She didn't say anything at first. Then she reached for my hand, and in that silent moment, we didn't need definitions, only presence, only promise. It started with crayon marks on the kitchen wall. Not the most poetic beginning, I know, but when you have two little girls sharing a space, something is bound to become a canvas. Clara and Lily had started spending weekends together at my place. At first, it was awkward. Two girls sizing each other up, both protective of their time with me, both wondering if they had to share more than just toys, but it didn't take long. One rainy afternoon, I found them huddled on the living room floor, giggling over a mess of paper, glue, and glitter, the kind of chaos that only ends with sparkles in someone's hair and a permanent mark on the carpet. They were drawing portraits of each other. Clara had sketched Lily with a crown and a sword. Lily had drawn Clara as a superhero with pink wings and a frying pan. They called it Sisters Who Saved the World. I didn't correct them. Instead, I picked up my tools and cleared out the back corner of the garage. The place where I used to fix engines now transformed into a light-filled art studio with shelves full of supplies and a big table just for them. Vivian visited often. She'd sit in the doorway, sipping tea, watching the girls argue about color palettes and laugh until their cheeks hurt. I noticed she smiled more now, really smiled, the kind of smile that reaches the eyes and stays. Her voice was softer, her shoulders less guarded, and in the stillness between us, we both knew this wasn't the family we had planned, but maybe it was the one we were meant to have, and somehow that was more than enough. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind I used to crave when life was chaos. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the house. I stood by the window, cup in hand, watching the girls in the backyard. Clara was twirling in a circle, her long hair catching the late sunlight, while Lily chased bubbles with the determination of a warrior. Laughter danced through the air, light and unburdened. Vivian was inside, on a call in the living room, her voice softened by the distance. And me? I was just standing still, soaking it all in. "Dad." The word hit me like a stone thrown into still water. Not Ethan, not Mister, not even hey. Just Dad. I turned slowly. Clara was standing by the kitchen doorway, holding up a drawing with both hands. It was of the three of us, Vivian, her, and me, standing under a tree, our names written in crayon hearts above our heads. She grinned, proud and innocent. "Do you like it, Dad?" I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. My hands trembled just enough to make the coffee ripple in its cup. For a moment, I thought I might cry right there in front of her. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. One of those deep, trembling smiles you give when your heart's too full for words. "I love it," I whispered, barely holding myself together. "I love it so much." And in that stillness, I realized sometimes a single word can rebuild everything you thought was lost. Sometimes it takes a child's voice to remind you who you are. I used to think fate belonged to the powerful, the ones with money, influence, or perfect timing, but now I know the truth. Sometimes fate finds you in worn-out shoes and an oil-stained jacket, just as you're walking past the emergency room and hear the sound of a child collapsing behind you. It doesn't knock. It whispers through the trembling fingers of a little girl reaching for help, through the eyes of a woman you thought you'd never see again, through the laugh of a daughter who didn't know your name but already knew your heart. I wasn't extraordinary. I was broke, lost, tired, and just trying to be enough for one little girl who called me Dad. But sometimes, the simple act of kneeling beside someone, of choosing to care when you don't have to, that's where fate begins. If you've ever doubted your worth, if you've ever wondered whether your kindness matters, I want you to know unconditional love is the most extraordinary thing you can give. And you never know who's watching or whose world you might change just by showing up. If you're still here, thank you. This story isn't just mine. Maybe somewhere out there, someone like you is waiting for a reason to believe in tomorrow again. So if this touched something in you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you've ever had a moment like this, a quiet collision with fate, tell me in the comments. I read every single one, because your story matters too.